çalışıyoruz. Bunlar da sen
Today is Sunday, March 12th, 2017, and today we're going to talk about a situation going on right now in Holland. A lot of these riots, so-called protests, etc., and the reason why they're happening. Now, before we get into all the facts, figures, all the detailed analysis, what I want to do is give you a brief rundown on what's happening. Now, the situation is due to a beef between Holland and Turkey, right? And Turkish citizens that are currently living in Holland. And it was a series of events that happened, and it all started yesterday on Saturday, the 11th of March. The first thing that happened was the Turkish foreign minister, a man named Mevlut Çavuşoğlu. If I'm pronouncing his name wrong, please excuse me. I'm not a Turk, obviously, but that was the man's name. I placed his picture and his name on the screen before you. He was prevented from being able to land in Holland, and or his privileges to be able to land have been revoked. Either way, he was not allowed to come to Rotterdam to speak. And the reason why he was coming to Rotterdam to speak, I'll get to in a little bit. Now, the second thing that happened was you had the president of Turkey, Erdoğan, who was in Turkey in Istanbul, giving a speech in front of a large crowd. And in that speech, he had some very inflammatory things against Holland. So you had that going on. And then after that, you had a situation where a Turkish minister of, I think, social services was coming to the Turkish consulate in Holland, but she was prevented from being able to enter the actual consulate. This woman's name was Betul Sayankaya, and I'll place her name and picture on the screen before you. And I also placed one of the tweets she had, which really got a lot of people incensed and enraged. See, it was a series of a few events that made that happen. You had the first thing was a Turkish foreign minister was not allowed into the country. Then you had Erdogan's speech in Turkey, which was, serving as motivation for people to get upset that are in Turkey and also Turks abroad. And then you had the woman who was prevented from being able to enter the Turkish consulate in Holland, which is an unprecedented thing because the way consulates work is that's like the territory of the foreign country within that country that the consulate is. So for her to not be allowed into the actual consulate was something that was pretty big. Now, the Turks will say that's the reason why they were out there rioting and protesting. The Turks that are in the Netherlands, that is, because of the treatment towards people that try to come from Turkey to their country that are government officials that were denied access. But the Dutch government, they will say, well, the reason why we did that is to prevent any kind of rioting and protesting because we have had problems before with them coming and exciting Turkish nationals within the Netherlands. And the reason why the foreign minister of Turkey was going to come to Rotterdam was to speak about a referendum going on in Turkey on the 16th of April. Now, the referendum is there to try and give Erdoğan more power. Erdoğan basically wants to make it easier for him to do whatever he wants to do. In the referendum, which I placed some of the text on the screen before you, he wants to be able to elect whoever he wants, hire and fire whoever he wants. He wants to basically make it to where the Constitution is changed to allow a dictator to be in office, and he wants to use referendum to be able to do that. So that's why the foreign minister was going to Rotterdam to be able to speak to those that are in the Netherlands that are Turkish citizens still, because they're able to vote in the referendum. You see, that's why he was coming. But the Dutch government did not want him there because they know how Turks act when they congregate together, especially when we're talking about a nationalist issue. I have some pictures on the screen before you of the Turks in the Netherlands. You can't tell if they are in Rotterdam or if they're in Ankara or if they're in Istanbul. I mean, look at all the Turkish flags. I mean, why would you have so many Turkish flags in the Netherlands? It doesn't make any sense. It's like me and a lot of other people going to Iran flying American flags. It doesn't make any sense. And now seeing some of the news reports about this, you had one guy talking about, oh, they're Turkish Dutch. It's like, what? Turkish Dutch? It doesn't make any sense. Either you Turkish or you Dutch. Like if I go to China, am I American Chinese? It doesn't make any sense. I'm an American in China. It's that simple. I don't become Chinese just by moving to China. But I digress. Now, this whole thing, the referendum going on, the previous incidents that have happened with Turks in Europe in general, but most certainly in the Netherlands, all of that background, and especially Erdogan's speech, which was very inflammatory, and also the inflammatory tweets coming from the social services minister from Turkey. All of that helped to fuel a lot of these so-called protests and riots. And of course, they are in the streets talking about Allahu Akbar, being very pro-Erdoğan. It's very surreal to see stuff like that. And by the way, the mayor of Rotterdam is a Muslim himself, which is hilarious. He's a guy from Morocco, which is on the west coast of Africa and the Sahara, like close to the Sahara. It's not quite Turkey, but he's still a Muslim. And even he was like, look, you can't have these people here creating so many problems. They're going to incite riots. They're going to incite a lot of violence that we don't want. Even though that happened anyway, I think they were trying to prevent what happened. But it's difficult to do it because if you allow them to come and have these insightful so-called rallies, which are basically like thinly veiled pro-Islam marches that devolve into riots, when you have stuff like that, you know you're going to get problems that come as a result. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter where you come from. You can see an obvious thing. You can see an obvious pattern. And this has deeper implications than just what's going on right here in Holland. This can affect the entire Europe because what's going on right now, you got a man named Geert Wilders. Hopefully I pronounced his name correctly. I will place his picture and his name on the screen before you. He is set to become the next prime minister of Holland. And people are afraid of him because he has promised to de-Islamize the Netherlands. So people are afraid. They're thinking he's like far right. The same thing with Marine Le Pen in France. They don't want her to be the so-called far right winger. But from what I hear from Europeans is that she's more of a left winger. See, it's not even about left or right. It's not even about trying to be a Nazi or whatever. And by the way, Erdoğan and some of the other people were likening the Dutch people to Nazis, and also some people in Germany. I think he said something about Angela Merkel. Erdoğan and they said something about Angela Merkel talking about being a Nazi.
Ey Almanya, sizin demokrasiyle yakından uzaktan alakanız yok. Sizin şu andaki uygulamalarınız geçmişteki Nazi uygulamalarından farklı değil, bunu böyle biliniz. Ve rahatsız oluyorlar bu ifadelerden. Niye rahatsız oluyorsun?
Which is crazy because it's like, how you going to call Angela Merkel out of all people a Nazi when she is like demonized for her position on immigration, allowing so many people in just to be unfettered and unchecked. But I digress. Really what Erdoğan is doing with the Turks that are acting up in Holland are basically making it easier for a man like Geert Wilders to come through and win, because everybody has a unifying thing to rally behind. It's the problem with Islam. It doesn't matter what country they come from. And the thing about Turkey that's a little bit deeper than just the elections that are going on right now in Turkey, as far as the referendum and also the presidential prime minister elections going on in Europe. Beyond all of that, Turkey is a very important region in the world. It's very sensitive as well because Turkey is the only country that borders both the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. It's very important. And we also have the U.S. We also have many military bases in Turkey to help fight the war on terror. A lot of our airstrikes from Syria may originate in Turkey. A lot of our ships and whatnot can come straight from Turkey because it's right there. I'll place a map on the screen before you. It's right there in close proximity of the Middle East. So we need them, or we say we need them for our military might. But at the same time, they're quickly becoming a more radicalized Islamic state under Erdoğan. It's kind of confusing what's going on over there. You had the soft coup that happened that may or may not have been real, but it's a situation that needs to be looked at very closely. Turkey also wants to become part of the European Union, which is hilarious. Turkey is not in Europe. Well, except for geographically, the only part of Turkey that's in Europe is to the west of Istanbul, which is only about maybe 10% of the country. The majority of the country geographically is in Asia. It's not Europe. So to become part of the European Union, I think you need to have all of your country in Europe and not 90% of it in Asia. But I digress. But Turkey is not Europe. Turkey is the Middle East. And it's pretty simple. But they're trying to become part of Europe. But with actions like this, it just makes it much easier for those that would consider them to be part of Europe to not be part of Europe. So that's pretty much all I got to say about it. I think that the Netherlands, France, UK, even Germany will not be such bleeding hearts allowing any and everybody to come into the country. They will not allow themselves to be Islamized. Stuff like this, when you come to a country, they give you welcome, they don't discriminate against you, and then you just take advantage of it, I think it's an unfair thing to do. If you are a guest in their country, or if you come to their country, you're an immigrant or whatever, You should be able to appreciate what's going on and not to just act like it doesn't mean anything, like their generosity is worthless. I think that's the wrong thing to do. But what do you think? Do you think that Erdoğan is intentionally trying to gin up a lot of these problems, a lot of these riots and protests? Because I have heard that these riots and protests were organized by the council in Holland, the Turkish council in Holland, from social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc. They're telling people, hey, go out there in the street with your Turkish flag, go out there, get water hosed, get dogs put on you, whatever it is, to try and make the case for Erdoğan in Turkey to become a dictator, because that's what the referendum is about. On April the 16th, they're going to vote to allow Erdoğan to have more power. So maybe they think, okay, if he has more power, then he's able to do more what he's doing as far as organizing riots and whatnot in European countries and destabilizing them. Maybe that's what Turkey wants. Or do you think there's something else going on here that I did not mention? Do you think there's more to the story? Do you think there's a wrinkle of the story that I missed? Whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.